The truth behind Dolly Parton's passing opening, slow, emotional music. For more than half a century, Dolly Parton seemed almost impossible to stop. She was a singer, a songwriter, an actress, a businesswoman, a philanthropist, and, to millions of people around the world, something even more personal, a familiar face who seemed to represent kindness, humor, determination, and hope. But on August 25, 2026, the world received news that many people never expected to hear. Dolly Parton had died. She was 80 years old, and almost immediately, questions began spreading. What really happened? Had Dolly been seriously ill? Why had she recently stepped away from some public appearances? What did she know about her health? And was there more to the story than people had been told? Today, we're going to separate the confirmed facts from speculation and look at the final chapter of Dolly Parton's extraordinary life. This isn't a story about rumors. It's a story about what we actually know. And perhaps more importantly, it's a story about the woman behind the legend. Pause, because Dolly Parton's story didn't begin with fame. It began in rural Tennessee, and understanding where she came from helps explain why her final years, and even her final months, meant so much. Chapter 1. The girl from Tennessee Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in Tennessee. She grew up in a large family with very little money. Her childhood was far removed from the glamorous world that would eventually surround her. There were no giant stages, no international tour, no recording studios filled with producers, no theme park carrying her name. Dolly grew up knowing what it meant to struggle, but music was always there. She began writing songs while she was still young and eventually traveled to Nashville to pursue the dream that would completely change her life. That dream became reality. Dolly's career grew throughout the 1960s and 1970s, and she became one of country music's most recognizable performers. But she wasn't satisfied with simply being successful. She wanted control over her songwriting. She wanted to write her own story. And she wanted to prove that a woman from a poor family in Tennessee could build something enormous without forgetting where she came from. That became one of the defining themes of her life. Chapter 2. More than a singer, Dolly Parton eventually became much more than a country music star. She became an entertainer known around the world. Songs such as Jolene, 9 to 5, and I Will Always Love You became part of popular culture. Her music reached people who didn't normally listen to country music. She appeared in major films. She created businesses. She became associated with Dollywood. And she became one of the most successful songwriters of her generation. But perhaps one of her greatest achievements wasn't a song at all. It was the Imagination Library. The program began in 1995 and provided free books to children. Over the years, its reach became enormous, with hundreds of millions of books distributed around the world. That tells us something important about Dolly. She remembered what it felt like to grow up without having much. And instead of simply becoming wealthy and famous, she repeatedly used her success to help other people. That became a major part of her legacy. Chapter 3. The years before her passing. To understand Dolly's final chapter, we need to look at what happened before August 2026. One of the most important events was the death of her husband, Carl Dean. Dolly and Carl had been married for almost 60 years. He died in March 2025. His death affected Dolly deeply. She had spent decades with him away from the spotlight, and she had spoken about the difficulty of rebuilding her life after losing him. Grief became part of the final chapter of Dolly's story, and then came another challenge. Her own health began to change. In August 2026, shortly before her death, Dolly publicly acknowledged that she had been dealing with health problems. Reports said she had experienced issues including dizziness and dehydration, and she explained that some of her health had been neglected while she was caring for Carl. She had also been taking a step back from some public activities. At the time, however, Dolly was still involved in projects. She was still thinking about music. She was still working on her legacy. She was still planning for the future, and that is important. Because the story of Dolly Parton's final days isn't simply a story of someone who suddenly disappeared. She was still creating, still planning, still thinking about what would come next. Chapter 4. The final health battle. Then came the news that changed everything. According to her representatives, Dolly Parton had been fighting cancer. It was described as a brief battle. That is the confirmed explanation for her death. Dolly died on August 25, 2026, at the age of 80. Her family confirmed the news publicly. She had been receiving care in Nashville, and reports say she was surrounded by loved ones. There are many details people may want to know about the exact circumstances, but this is where we have to be careful. When someone famous dies, the internet can fill with speculation within minutes. People begin looking for hidden explanations. Old interviews are taken out of context. Photographs are analyzed. Rumors become headlines. And eventually, people can no longer tell the difference between something that has actually been confirmed and something that someone simply posted online. So let's make the distinction clear. The confirmed information is that Dolly Parton died at 80 following a brief battle with cancer. Anything beyond those confirmed details should not automatically be treated as fact. And there is something important about respecting that boundary. Dolly spent her entire life in public, but that doesn't mean every private moment of her final days belongs to the public. Chapter 5. Why the news shocked people. One reason Dolly's death felt so shocking was because she had spent decades giving people the impression that she would simply keep going. She was known for an extraordinary work ethic. Even at 80, she had projects planned. She was involved with new business ventures. She had music projects. She had plans for a museum. She had a Broadway musical based on her life. And she had continued thinking about her work long into her later years. Her official website had continued announcing projects and achievements shortly before her death. That made the news particularly difficult for fans to process. It is one thing to lose someone who has already disappeared from public life. It is another to lose someone who was still actively building things. Dolly's team has since indicated that many projects she had been developing will continue. That means the public will likely continue seeing new Dolly Parton projects even after her death. In a strange way, the Dolly Parton story is not ending on August 25, 2026. A large part of what she created is still moving forward. Chapter 6. The legacy she left behind. So what exactly did Dolly leave behind? The obvious answer is music, but that only tells part of the story. She left behind thousands of songs. She left behind films. She left behind businesses. She left behind Dollywood. She left behind books and television projects. She left behind a huge catalog of unreleased and planned material. But her greatest legacy may be the people she helped. Through the Imagination Library, children around the world received books. Through charitable donations, Dolly supported education, medical research, disaster relief, and other causes. She became famous for giving, and that generosity wasn't something she added to her career at the end. It was woven into the identity she built throughout her life. Dolly often spoke about dreams, and perhaps that is one reason so many people connected with her. She came from circumstances where the biggest dreams could have seemed impossible. Yet she dreamed anyway. She worked anyway. She kept creating anyway. And eventually, she became one of the most recognizable entertainers on earth. Chapter 7. The woman behind the image. There is another side to Dolly's story that is easy to overlook. Dolly Parton was an image. The hair, the clothes, the humor, the voice, the jokes, the confidence. Everything about her public appearance was instantly recognizable, but behind that image was a highly intelligent businesswoman. She understood branding before the modern era of social media influencers and personal brands. She understood how to turn a name into an entire world. Dollywood wasn't simply a theme park. Her books weren't simply books. Her songs weren't simply songs. Her public personality wasn't accidental. Dolly understood who she was, and she understood what people needed from her. But perhaps the most remarkable part was that she didn't seem embarrassed by the larger-than-life image. She embraced it, she played with it, and she used it to create opportunities. The woman behind the rhinestones was a songwriter, entrepreneur, and strategist. That is part of the truth behind her success. Chapter 8. Her husband, Carl Dean, and grief. There is another important part of the story. Carl Dean. For decades, Dolly's husband stayed mostly away from the spotlight. Their relationship was unusual by celebrity standards. Dolly was one of the most recognizable people on earth. Carl preferred privacy. They built a life together away from much of the attention. When Carl died in 2025, Dolly lost someone who had been part of her life for most of her adulthood. In the period that followed, Dolly spoke about grief and the process of rebuilding herself. That matters because sometimes we look at celebrities as if fame protects them from ordinary human experiences. It doesn't. Money doesn't remove grief. Fame doesn't remove loneliness. Success doesn't prevent illness. And being loved by millions doesn't replace losing someone you personally love. Dolly Parton's final years, therefore, contained both incredible achievement and profound personal loss. That contrast is important, because the real story is more complicated than the image of the endlessly cheerful Dolly Parton. She was human, and like everyone else, she experienced happiness, sadness, success, disappointment, love, and loss. Chapter 9. Why rumours spread after her death. Whenever a major celebrity dies, rumors appear. Dolly Parton was no exception. Some people immediately asked whether her health problems had been worse than the public knew. Others searched through old interviews. Some people tried to connect unrelated events. And social media quickly became filled with claims, but there is a major difference between asking questions and inventing answers. If a family or medical representative confirms a cause of death, that is the information we should use. If something hasn't been confirmed, we should say that it hasn't been confirmed. This is especially important when discussing someone's death. A person's final illness shouldn't become entertainment. A documentary can be interesting without turning someone's private suffering into speculation. So the truth behind Dolly Parton's passing isn't a secret conspiracy. The confirmed story is much simpler. She was 80. She had been dealing with health problems. Her representatives confirmed that she had a brief battle with cancer. And on August 25, 2026, she died. Everything beyond that needs to be treated carefully. Chapter 10. Dolly's final projects. One of the most remarkable details about Dolly's final period is how much she was still planning. Her team has said she had developed a roadmap for projects that could continue for years after her death. There were music projects, books, television ideas, business ventures, and a major Broadway musical about her life. The musical, Dolly, a true original musical, is scheduled to continue to Broadway. It is based on her life and music and includes new material written by Dolly herself. That means audiences will continue discovering her story even after she is gone. There is something strangely fitting about that. Dolly spent her life telling stories through music, and now, even after her death, those stories will continue. Chapter 11. The final message. Dolly's final chapter also reminds us of something she understood throughout her career. A person's legacy isn't only what they accomplish, it's what they leave in other people. A song can make someone feel understood. A book can inspire a child. A charitable program can change someone's future. A joke can make someone laugh during a difficult day. A kind word can stay with someone for years. That is the kind of legacy Dolly built. Her influence reached far beyond country music. People who never bought a country album knew who Dolly Parton was. People who had never visited Tennessee knew about Dollywood. Parents knew about the Imagination Library. Younger generations discovered her through films, television, and collaborations with younger artists. She became one of those rare entertainers whose influence crossed generations. Grandparents could listen to Dolly. Parents could listen to Dolly. Children could grow up hearing Dolly, and that is incredibly difficult for any artist to achieve. Chapter 12. The world says goodbye. After news of her death spread, tributes came from around the world. Musicians remembered her. Actors remembered her. Political figures remembered her. Fans remembered her. People who had never met her still felt as if they had lost someone familiar. That is the strange power of entertainment. A person can live thousands of miles away from you, yet their voice can become part of your life. Dolly's music became part of weddings, parties, road trips, family memories, movies, television shows, and quiet moments when people simply needed a song. So when Dolly died, people weren't only mourning a celebrity. They were mourning a part of their own memories. Chapter 13. What happens now? The obvious question is, what happens to Dolly Parton's legacy now? The answer is that much of it will continue. Dollywood will continue operating. The imagination library will continue its work. Her music will continue to be played. Her films will continue to be watched. Her books will continue to reach readers. And projects she helped develop before her death are expected to continue. Her team has also indicated that there is still unreleased material and other projects planned for the future. So although Dolly Parton is gone, the work she created is not. In fact, people may discover more of it in the years ahead. That may become one of the most unusual parts of her legacy. The world is still going to hear Dolly Parton. Number Chapter 14. The Real Truth. So what is the real truth behind Dolly Parton's passing? It isn't a mysterious story that requires a conspiracy. It isn't something that needs to be exaggerated. And it isn't necessary to turn her death into something sensational. The truth is that Dolly Parton, one of the most successful and beloved entertainers of the modern era, reached the end of her life at 80 after a brief battle with cancer. But that isn't the whole story. The whole story is that before her death, she had already spent decades building something that would outlive her. She turned songs into memories. She turned a childhood dream into a global career. She turned personal success into charitable work. She created opportunities for other people. She helped children receive books. She created businesses. She built Dollywood. She inspired generations of musicians. And she remained connected to the idea that dreaming was important. Perhaps that's the part we should remember most. Not simply how Dolly Parton died, but how Dolly Parton lived. Number Chapter 15. The lasting memory. Imagine that little girl in Tennessee before the fame, before the awards, before the millions of records, before the television appearances, before Dollywood, before the worldwide recognition. She had a dream, and somehow that dream became real. Dolly Parton's life wasn't perfect. It wasn't without pain. It wasn't without loss. And her final years weren't without difficult moments. But her story is remarkable because she continued creating through all of them. She continued to dream. She continued to work. She continued to give. And she continued to believe that her life could be used to make someone else's life a little better. That's why the news of her death has affected so many people. Because Dolly wasn't simply famous. She became part of people's lives. Number ending music becomes quieter. Dolly Parton died on August 25, 2026, at the age of 80. Her family confirmed that she had been battling cancer. The world lost a legendary performer, but it also gained something from the life she lived. Thousands of songs, countless memories, books given to children, businesses that will continue, projects still waiting to be released, and a message that Dolly carried throughout her life. Dream big, work hard, be kind, and don't forget where you came from. Dolly Parton's story began in a small Tennessee community. It traveled across the world. And now, even though her life has ended, her story hasn't. Her music is still here. Her words are still here. Her work is still here. And the people she helped are still here. That may be the most important truth behind Dolly Parton's passing. She may be gone, but the things she created and the people she inspired will continue carrying her story forward. Pause, rest in peace, Dolly. And thank you for the music. Fade to Black.